Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Access City Council. I'm your host, City of Las Vegas Communications Director David Riggleman. Coming up on this show, find out how a local nonprofit group is ensuring a good start for every baby, and another group inspires and mobilized volunteers to get involved and give back to the community. Here to talk about these topics and a whole lot more is the councilman who represents Ward 1. You know who it is, Mr. Brian Knudsen. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Welcome
Thank you,
back.
David. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Here we are in September already, and
It's been a year.
Yeah,
it has been a year.
It has. It
Yes.
has. You've been very busy out there. We're going to talk about that. You've really been out and about. You're not wasting any time. You're getting out and meeting the constituents for sure. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. First of all, though, if you don't know exactly where Ward 1 is located, well, have no fear. We're going to show you right here on the map. It's really kind of in the center of it all right here in the city of Las Vegas, in the center of the valley as well. It's where Las Vegas started, the Springs Preserve. The springs that started Las Vegas are in Ward 1. And if you live in that area or work in the area on the map, then of course you're in Ward 1 in the city of Las Vegas. And if you're a resident there, then you're represented on the city council by Mr. Brian Knudsen. And you know, Councilman, I think probably the main thing we should talk about right off the bat is, being that we are in September, huge anniversary. It was 20 years since the 9/11 attack in 2001. It's hard for me to grasp that much time has passed since that day, because in many ways that day, I think for all of us that were around at the time, just memories are just burned into our minds.
Yeah, and I know just by you mentioning it, everyone who's watching is thinking about what they were doing on 9/11. So I worked at the Salt Lake City Airport. I was an emergency dispatcher, and on that particular morning, I was off and riding bikes in a park.
Wow.
Later that day, I got called in for overtime because everything just shut down. And so my job was to sit there, and we worked closely with the FBI and Secret Service and all these federal agencies about keeping the airports shut down, essentially. So it was a really memorable time in my life and set the stage going forward for what to expect from our country. But I was thinking about it, all the young people that were around now, because it's different generation, this Gen Z generation, there's a lot of them, they didn't know what it was. And so it's really interesting.
They hear about it from us.
They hear about it from us, and their entire, the country has been set forth based on that moment in time. So it's just interesting how it's shaped how we've evolved over the last 20 years. That's what I was thinking about over this last weekend.
It's interesting too, since the first attack back in 2001, we've had a very solemn and poignant ceremony that takes place at Fire Station 5, which is in your ward. We have a piece of the World Trade Center, a piece of an I-beam there. The New York City Fire Department donated a flag, which we fly every September 11th. And there's now one of the seedlings from the survivor tree is also planted there. So we had the ceremony this year, appropriately enough, on September 11th. A beautiful morning, like it was back 20 years ago. And this is the ceremony where, again, the flag that went up there is the one given to us from the New York City Fire Department. Governor Sisolak is there, and of course you and other members of the city council. It's our fire chief, Jeff Buchanan, there.
And that's Councilman Creer and Councilwoman Diaz and Congresswoman Susie Lee was there. Tim Szymanski, who's the PIO for the fire department, does a great job every year. I've been there for the last 3 years now, ringing a bell and having a moment of silence. So 20 years later, it's still etched into our memories.
It's Tim you see in the background. And in the fire service, in the days before there were radios and telephones, they would ring bells along the way at different areas of town to indicate what was taking place, so the fire department could communicate. And the tolling of the bells that Tim is doing here indicated that a firefighter had died in the line of duty.
Yeah, definitely a poignant moment, and for those of us who are alive, which are probably a lot of the people watching right now, I know you're thinking about where you were 20 years ago on September 11th.
Yeah, it's and again, this ceremony is so poignant. It's very not a lot of speech making. It's really just time to reflect and remember. I was at a conference in Miami, Florida, and had a heck of a time coming home after that. Couldn't come home for days and days because there were no flights. And along those same lines, we had a tropical storm blow through Miami. In fact, the original thought was, well, the conference will be over before the tropical storm gets there. But then we couldn't leave, so I got to be there for the tropical storm as well. And
That is memorable.
It was very memorable. I haven't been back to Miami since then. So
Understandable.
Sorry, Miami. But yeah, it was not the best of memories all the way around. So, Councilman, you were recently on KNPR, and you guys were talking about housing here. In fact, you tweeted this. You said, Councilman Knudsen joined Andrew Woods, the director for UNLV Center for Business and Economic Research, on KNPR to talk about housing in Southern Nevada. A big concern right now, if you're selling a house, it's great. If you're trying to buy a home right now, a big concern. People are seeing rent go up, affordability of houses getting smaller and smaller, and it's an issue for us now.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this on the show before. So the city of Las Vegas is short about 50,000 units. The cost of rent really pushes out professionals like teachers, like firefighters,
right.
The folks that service at our grocery store, at our local coffee shop. The rents are becoming at a point where they really can't afford to live here. And there's the median price for a home right now is about $400,000.
Which is incredible.
It's a lot.
You and I have lived here a long time, and think about how that's changed. That's just dramatically different.
It is, and so infill development is one piece that we're going to have to go towards, and I know it's super scary, and that's what I said on KNPR. It's really, really scary if you're living in a neighborhood, you've been there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and thinking about what development is going to look like around you. So as you're driving through the downtown core or any part of Ward 1 or Ward 3 or Ward 5, you're going to see vacant parcels, you're going to see some dilapidated buildings. It's hard to rethink those areas as maybe there's going to be an apartment complex there. Maybe it's going to be a 3 or a 4 or a 5 or higher story apartment complex. It's terrifying. And I listen to people all the time who are really terrified of what that means. What I try to say is that is how Southern Nevada is going to grow. That is how Las Vegas is going to grow. We're going to grow up. What that does mean is you get better sidewalks in your area. You get upgraded infrastructure in your area. You have the ability to have more police officers and more firefighters, because with great density comes with more public services.
Yeah, right.
You also get the opportunity for higher end shopping markets, if that's what you're thinking about. It's a balance. And so that's one of the things that I think the City Council has a lot of responsibility over, is balancing out our growth with preserving what we've already built in Southern Nevada. It's not the easiest balance.
It's difficult, very difficult.
And so you can see that for those neighborhoods right now who aren't as happy with me, because I have approved apartment complexes, 4 of them now in the last couple of years. Las Vegas is going to look different. There are going to be more apartment complexes. We are going to grow up. And that's what the KNPR conversation was about, was infill development, is what is Vegas going to look like in 20, 30, 40 years? Because as you know, in our master plan, we predict that there'll be another 300,000 people that move into our community. Yeah. We have to create space for them, and we have to create opportunities for them to live in a place that allows them to live their fullest life.
Yeah.
They have to be able to pay their rent. And so it's a really tough decision, and it's a tough job being a council member at this time when Las Vegas is going to grow. And so I take the responsibility very seriously, and that's why I spend a lot of time listening to people about how we can best preserve their quality of life while also building out the opportunity for quality of life for other people.
Yeah, it was a great discussion on KNPR. Again, it's a really tough situation right now. For those of us who've lived here, housing, the price of houses has just skyrocketed, which again is great if you have the asset and you're looking to sell it. But if you're trying to get into the market, buy a house, or to keep your rent from skyrocketing, it's a really tough time.
If you're a first-year Clark County School District teacher or a City of Las Vegas firefighter, and you're single and you don't have kids and you're looking to establish yourself as an adult, buying a house here really isn't an option right now. So you have to be able to rent an apartment, and right now I know personally people who are unable to rent apartments because there aren't any in the marketplace.
Right.
So that's part of our job as a city, is to create a space where people can thrive. It's a tough job. We have to do it though.
Yeah, it's a great discussion, and I think you're spot on. It's a really tough balancing act right now. Councilman, you took a Rebuilding Together Southern Nevada tour. Tell everybody what this is about. You visited with residents. Tell us what this was all about.
So Rebuilding Together is a partner with most of the jurisdictions in town. It's a local nonprofit. a small but mighty team of people that identify homes that are in need of disrepair and work with contractors, volunteers to make those homes habitable. So in this particular instance, in the picture you saw, I was at a home of a 95-year-old Navy veteran. He's being cared for by his 75-year-old daughter.
Wow.
They live in a 2-bedroom home in Ward 1. And the bathroom was no longer ADA accessible for him. It was never ADA accessible, but it wasn't accessible for him as a 95-year-old veteran. Getting out the back door was no longer accessible for him as, again, a 95-year-old. And so Rebuilding Together comes in and rebuilds their bathroom to make it ADA accessible, rebuilds the back porch, replaces the air conditioner, replaces the roofing, and makes the home accessible, which is important right now given the conversation that we just had, that there is nowhere else for that 95-year-old and his 75-year-old daughter to go to. So we needed to create an environment where they can age in place, stay at home, in an environment that's suitable for them. Rebuilding Together, the local nonprofit, is a team of 8 people and dozens of contractors. They go out and do that throughout our valley. There's dozens and dozens of homes on a list waiting for that kind of service. And so it was a great eye-opening experience for me to see how the city can partner with organizations to improve living conditions for everyone. And again, going back to that conversation, preserving neighborhoods, that is part of the responsibility, is preserving those neighborhoods that are in need of a little bit of love and care.
Well, Councilman, I didn't know Rebuilding Together, Southern Nevada, didn't know they even existed, so that's quite a group.
Yes, and they partner with all of the jurisdictions on doing these kinds of projects. They get local community development block grant funding, of the city is one of those, and it helps to build out their portfolio of homes that they're able to serve. That's
terrific. Well, you've been visiting with a lot of folks, and not just that group, but you've really been out pounding the pavement here, Councilman. I was impressed. It's like you got to be exhausted since the last time you were on the show. You posted this on Facebook. You said, good morning and happy first day of school for our students in Nevada. And you were out there as kids were going back to school. You were out visiting the schools with everyone as well, and wished them the best of luck. So
we were fortunate enough that we have some really great principals in Ward 1 that reach out and say, hey, I need this, I need help. Can you do this? And the answer is always yes. If you feel comfortable enough to reach out, the answer is always yes. So we did breakfast for teachers coming in on the first day of school. We did backpacks. Dorian and Carl and Maria from my office went around and gave iPads.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
That was one of the requests, and so we did as much as we could for all the schools that were asking, and we'll talk about it, but listening to the principals, like talking to them about the issues they have, the concerns they have, the needs they have, it helps me to do a better job as an elected official, I think.
You know, that's the thing. What a challenging year. It's coming out of a even more challenging year previous to now the kids are back in the classroom. A lot of flux, a lot of catching up to do, a lot of trying to understand the whole mask thing. We were talking about little kids are not exactly fans of the mask. Big kids aren't either. But
it's a thing. It's a thing. So I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. My 5-year-old has a hard time putting the mask above his nose. He can do it. He just chooses not to. My 3-year-old chooses to eat the mask right now. I don't know why. Working on that as a parent, I can only imagine what it's like being a teacher with 10, 20, 30 students, trying to make sure that the students are compliant. It's a tough job, and you know, you don't have to be political about masks or vaccines or anything like that. You can talk about what it's like to be a human being and trying to deal with children who are being raised in an environment that is complicated. It's just complicated. And so our job, I think, is to give as much love and support to teachers, to educators, to principals, to everybody working with children to make sure that they feel loved and supported, and children grow up in an environment where they feel loved and supported as well.
Well, and case in point, Councilman, you put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. You posted this on Facebook. You said, happy Saturday. We hope everyone had a great first week of school. This week, Team Knudsen dropped off iPads and earbuds to Hyde Park Middle School and Vegas Verdes Elementary School for students and teachers. And again, you were responding to a need that the principals told you about, right?
The principals needed gifts for students to show that they were doing a great job, and that was a consistent request amongst all the principals is we need something to give back to the students, to the teachers too. And so that's how we helped out several of the schools in Ward 1.
Well, and you did help out the teachers too. they didn't get iPads maybe, but you tweeted this out today. I had a blast visiting Katz Elementary School to drop off some coffee and bagels for our teachers. And you know what? That's a nice pat on the back as well. So
just everything, every little thing matters when you're talking to educators. Make sure they know that they're appreciated, because that is the next generation that is in their hands. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that.
Councilman, how many schools, I don't recall off the top of my head, how many schools do you have within your ward? It's about
15 schools,
I
yeah.
thought, somewhere in that area. And all the way from elementary to high school. And
every school is different. And so
yep.
I've done a lot in education, and some principals will say, just back off, let me do my thing. I don't need you. I don't need anything from the city. I'm good. Totally appropriate. And other principals are like, I need a little help. So can you bring me some masks? So we're delivering masks today.
Yeah.
Can you bring us some bagels and coffee? Can you do breakfast? Can you do iPads? All of it's appropriate,
Sure.
as long as those teachers and principals know that they're respected. And sometimes the best way to respect someone is to back off and let them do their thing.
And well, you said that, you do a lot of listening, and it's like, I hear you.
Yep.
These folks are saying they need help, and you're saying you don't. No problem.
Not everybody wants an elected official walking in their building. I sometimes don't want that myself, so I get it.
All right. And then, Councilman, I love this too. You posted this on Facebook. You said, cheers to the weekend. Team Knudsen had the opportunity to stop by Baby's Bounty, a local nonprofit in Ward 1 that supports families with newborn children. Again, Councilman, another group that I knew very, very little about. I'd heard of them, didn't even know exactly what they did.
So anybody that's ever had a child knows the complexities of having enough diapers, enough wipes, all the appropriate baby materials. Because you can't go to daycare without diapers. You can't go to work if your child doesn't have diapers and diaper rash cream and wipes and all those things. They're just essential things. And for a large portion of our population, they can't afford it.
Yeah.
So Baby's Bounty provides that initial kit for new parents.
That's great.
And it has a car seat, a baby bath, wipes, lotions, clothes for the new child. And so if you look at that picture, the reason why I wanted to volunteer there is because it's so super organized. Everything in there was so organized.
Yeah,
and so
that's right up your alley.
So I was so excited by it, because nothing in my house looks that organized. And I was like, I want to come back here and learn how to make my area organized. And so Dorian, Carl, Maria, and I came, and we packed out 6 or 7 new incoming mother packs for parents, and we put a whole bunch of stuff in there in an organized way based on what they needed, in English or Spanish, for boy or for girl. Super organized, fun way.
Wow.
It took a couple hours for us to give back to our community, and we got to write little notes to the new parents, and it was just a fun thing to do. So I was also able to donate some diapers, because my 3-year-old is potty trained now.
Yeah,
so it's super fun for me to get rid of the diapers. So fun for me.
Always a nice milestone.
Yes.
Yeah. So how many parents, families do they serve on a typical year? Do you know, Councilman? Is it in the hundreds, thousands? I mean, are they
thousands and thousands of new families? They're referred through Nevada Medicaid. They're referred through the hospitals. They're referred through different organizations, charitable organizations working with new families.
That's terrific.
COVID created a unique experience where lots and lots and lots of families were out of work, and so you still had children coming into the world, and so they needed to find a way to give out diapers very, very quickly. And so they got donations. They purchased diapers, enough to give out millions of diapers during COVID.
Wow.
And you can imagine why, because if you're a family that's out of work, there's food that's being distributed. There's housing is somewhat being taken care of a little bit
through the moratorium. Right.
And then you come down to just basic living expenses, and diapers are one of those if you have a child. And so I just thought it was a fantastic organization. It's Baby's Bounty. It's located in Ward 1. And if you have an opportunity to give back to nonprofits, Rebuilding Together was one, Baby's Bounty is another.
Wow.
There's lots of them out there, but those are 2 that are in Ward 1 that really struck a chord this last 6 weeks or so.
You know, Councilman, it's interesting. During the pandemic, I'm sure the challenge is just getting the diapers, getting the wipes. We had difficulty finding toilet paper for a time. So you can imagine bringing a new baby into a situation like that and not have just the essentials that you can track down.
And you remember right in the beginning, if you went to a grocery store, all the shelves were empty.
Yeah.
So if you had a infant right then and the shelves are empty, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, life kind of stops if you don't have diapers. And so those are things you're not thinking about unless you have an infant, and that's the only thing you're thinking about. So fantastic organization.
Well, Baby's Bounty, who knew? I thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention, but it sounds like a great organization, and very timely to have them around right now, especially. And another nonprofit, now this I know a little bit more about, the Just One Project. You recognized them at the City Council meeting. They were one of our honorees during our ceremonial portion of the council meeting. This took place back on September 1st.
I was super excited. So Dorian Stonebarger in my office is a board member of the Just One Project. The Just One Project is a relatively new nonprofit in town. I've worked with lots of nonprofits, and they have an impressive track record. They've been able to grow exponentially. They're the largest food distributor for Three Square Food Bank. Wow. They have employment resources, housing resources, and they just opened up a new little market where people can go in and pick out food on their own, as well as they're picking up home delivery of meals, so senior meal programs. So it's an amazing nonprofit right here in town that I think has an amazing future of growing and serving our community. So it was an honor of mine to recognize them at the City Council meeting, and I imagine the city and every other jurisdiction will be doing a lot more business with them going forward.
Yeah, those groups, I think for people to understand, Three Square food banks, they gather the food, but then other organizations help distribute it, and Just One Project is one of those that helps get the food out to the people who need it.
Yeah.
So the nonprofits here in town, and I really think at the guidance of the mayor, at least the participation of our mayor, have coordinated their efforts. In the past, and Councilman, you know this very, very well, they kind of duplicated effort. They were all kind of doing the same thing, or many of them were doing the same thing. Well, we have a food bank, you have a food bank, you have a food bank. We go collect food, you collect food. So there was kind of a huddle amongst them, and it's like, okay, we'll be the food bank, we'll be the distributors, and I think it's working pretty well, at least from what I can gather.
Yeah, so I can talk about that at length. I used to be a consultant prior to being an elected official, and that group, the CEO Exchange, was one of my clients, and so I worked with all of them, and it's amazing what you can do when you get people in a room and talk about the great things you're doing, because that's when we saw Three Square Food Bank provided food to Catholic charities, where before they were getting it from another entity. That's where you see partnerships between Safe Nest and Catholic Charities and Safe Nest and Nevada Hand, Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCA working together. So amazing nonprofits that came together 10 years ago now.
Wow, has it been that long? Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
And are still actively working together to figure out some of our most complex problems, the intractable challenges that we have as a community. So we have an amazing network of nonprofits in our community that really work hard and deserve our attention and support.
Well, I know that the mayor was very much behind all that, but I didn't realize that, you know, prior to coming to the city, that's what you were involved with as well. Maybe I'd forgotten it over time, but that was huge. That coordination amongst those organizations made a huge difference in the community, because the organizations weren't trying to duplicate effort and being far more efficient and really getting the resources to the people who needed it.
Yeah, it was a really good time in my life, and I love working with the nonprofit community, so I'm really proud of the work that I did with them.
Yeah, well, you've obviously made a difference there, and as you still do today, being on the city council. Councilman, I've always said you're someone who loves to listen, and you do that as well. You went out to the Liebern Senior Center, this was on September 9th, and just met with the seniors out there. And this is a big deal, folks, because you'll have to recall that our senior centers were closed for a long time during the pandemic. So to have these open again, with people able to come in, able to meet with their councilman, as you see here, it's a big deal.
It's one of my favorite things to do. They always have issues and concerns every single time. It's usually traffic related, but I get interesting requests all the time. And so this is one of 5 or 6 that I meet with on a pretty regular basis, and really happy to do it because it's helpful to listen and learn about the things that are important to them. The individual right there, John is his name, so he's requesting like a more proactive approach from code enforcement. Oh. And he wants people to go knocking on doors and help some of our community understand what it means to take care of your yard, to take care of your house, and why it's an important consideration for a neighborhood. So he was the first one to kind of bring that to my attention, and that's how we're organizing around Enchanted Village. Oh. And so I get ideas, and I like kind of talking through ideas with the folks that I meet with, and doing it at Liebern Senior Center is a super good way to do that.
Well, I know some things never change, because when you were a staff member here at the city, you were always a great listener. You would always take time to listen to what we were working on, kind of figure out what the issues were with whatever project, and then move forward. So obviously those skills have paid off well as you move into a city council job, because you can't fix stuff if you don't listen to what people need.
It is very funny. So in that particular Leeburn, the one that was being filmed, and Eric did a great job from your office filming it, but one person came up to me and said, we need the higher speed bumps because people are speeding. Then you sit down with the next person, he says, we need lower speed bumps because when the ambulance goes across, you don't want to be on the back end of the gurney bumping up and down.
Flying up into the air.
And that really typically is the role, I think, is to listen, because there's pros and cons to every single decision we make, and understanding what people are thinking is helpful.
Exactly. And then, Councilman, you kind of did the same thing. The Meadows Senior Living, you did a meet and greet over there and met with those folks. And I know how much they appreciate when you stop by. Again, you obviously had a few words for them, but they always are going to tell you, hey, this is kind of what we need or what we're experiencing as well. So.
I found that most of the time people just want to be heard. And it's really important to listen to them, understand what their issues or concerns are. At the Meadows, they were very interested in trusts and estates and wills. And so we brought an attorney out to talk about how to put your stuff into a piece of paper and make sure that if you were to pass, that it goes to the right people. And that was really beneficial. We're also working on traffic along the Valley View area. And so I go out there once a month or so, and I don't think I'm like elected official Brian. I'm just Brian that can do stuff for them, and I kind of like that. And it's a first name basis, and go out and sometimes we have a bagel or two and talk about the issues, and I hopefully can deal with a lot of the issues that they come up with.
You know, that's really great. Helping them with trusts and wills, not really a city thing, but connecting them with the resource that could help them.
Yeah,
that's great. That's what elected officials are supposed to be doing. So.
I think so.
All right. Well, Councilman, we're just about out of time. It always flies when we do this show. But hey, we want to remind you, we always want to hear from you. So if there's something you'd like to share with Councilman Knudsen, you can find him on Facebook and Twitter. You can also contact him just by picking up the phone. We still do that, 229-6405. Or you can send him an email. The address is bknudsen@lasvegasnevada.gov. And here, one of his great staff will get right back to you and help you out. So, well, great job. Great to have you on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bring you back in 6 weeks with another update from Ward 1. You might need a new pair of shoes with all the places you've been. You're gonna wear those out. But I know the constituents really appreciate hearing from you and you listening to them.
I appreciate them.
All right. And folks, we want to tell you, don't miss our next show beginning on September 23rd with Ward 3 City Councilwoman Olivia Diaz. You can catch all of our KCLV shows on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire, and watch for our QR code after the show to subscribe to our newsletter. And of course, don't forget, you can always watch us live on the internet at kclv.tv. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time around.